Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today we got another Gun Gripe episode for you, and I've got a very special guest with me here today. This is Matt from the Meet the Pressers show. He's got a great podcast, a great YouTube channel where they post all different kind of fun episodes regarding firearms ownership and laws and things like that with his co-host Clint. Now Clint's not here with us, but I do have Matt. And he's going to be, hanging out with me in today's Gun Gripe as my co-host. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Attorney General, Josh Shapiro in PA, now basically offering a classification of 80% lowers being firearms now. We've had a lot of our viewers in PA asking us to kind of touch on this a bit. Matt is a part-time law enforcement officer in upstate New York, so he can provide hopefully some good information on this. Also, there's very similar type of verbiage been thrown out in the state of New York as well.
Yep.
So this is kind of a pertinent talking point. So there's a lot of confusion that goes into, what constitutes a firearm? Can you make a firearm? Is it legal to make a firearm? Absolutely. It is 110% legal to make your own firearm. You don't even have to serialize it if you don't want to. Now, you're encouraged to serialize it. That way, in case, let's just say it ever gets stolen or damaged or lost, if you wanted to report that, there'd be some way that they could, track that receiver if it was discovered, found in possession of someone who wasn't supposed to have it or whatever. So you're encouraged to serialize, but you're not required to serialize, right? Everyone can make their own firearm. It's totally a common thing, right?
Now, in New York, the funny caveat to that is if you do a handgun, you have to serialize it and you have to put it on your pistol license because New York is one of those few states that you actually have to have a license, and then you have to have the make, model, caliber, and serial number of any handgun you own on that license.
Right. So there's a lot of jurisdictional fluff that gets thrown out there. Yep. So it depends on municipalities and what they decide to do, local ordinances, state law. So at
Attorney General.
Federal, yes, in this case, Attorney General. Now, at a federal level, allow me to reiterate,
right.
At a federal level, it is completely legal to make your own firearm, and you're not required to serialize said firearm. Now, one of the ways that that's done is by way of what they call an 80% lower. Okay. Now, an 80%, the general idea is that you have a partially machined or finished lower, or let's just say frame or whatever. It doesn't have to be an AR lower. It could be a pistol frame or AR lower. And then there's a certain amount of finish work that has to be completed by the end user in order to install the parts and have a functional firearm. It's not considered a firearm legally until you finish machine it into a firearm. And that's something the end user does. So the whole idea there, again, we're discussing federal law. At the federal level, it's not a firearm yet. It's shipped straight to your front door. You finish machine it. All right, then it's a firearm. You're encouraged, of course, to serialize it, keep track of it in your inventory, and life goes on. Okay, you go about living life, being free, everything like that. What the PA Attorney General is saying is that 80% are considered firearms, and he is directing law enforcement in PA to view an 80% as such, even to the point now where in New York and PA, they've actually gone to these websites that sell the 80% and sent them cease and desist letters and said, quit doing this crap because they're firearms. So they've directed their law enforcement to treat them as firearms.
And there was a DA in upstate New York, county DA, who had went on Channel News and said, 80% lowers, all you got to do is buy this piece off the internet, drill one hole in it, and put a magazine in it, and now it's an illegal gun. And no, that's not how it works. That's not the way it works. And then I had the news station call me and ask me to come on, and I basically went on and corrected things. But so there's even this misconception as far as what an 80% is, and ghost guns. The topic was ghost guns, but they were talking about 80% lowers. And but anybody can just buy it off the internet and build a gun. And I'm like, most bad guys aren't going to buy the stuff off the internet. They don't want to put the time into building a gun when they can just go down the street and spend a lot less money and a lot less time just buying something off the street or use a community gun.
To be clear, also, okay, it's not exactly easy. It does require a bit of technical prowess. It's not something that Joe Blow is really just going to do super simply without specialized tooling and knowledge, right? So it's not really intended for the impasse average gun owner to just go, I think I'll try my hand. And now, of course, it's cool to try your hand at it if you wish to just learn more about the processes. but it's really intended more for like the gun guy who has everything and just wants to be able to say, hey, check it out, I made this, whatever for myself. So
hobby stuff.
Yeah, it's more of like just because you can do it and it's cool, right? The guy that buys an 80% is probably a guy that already owns 5 Glocks, right? What does it matter if he makes an 80%er, right? So it's not like people are doing this for some illicit purpose to try to circumvent something, like circumvent having to fill out a 4473. A vast majority of people that buy 80% lower frames or AR lowers or whatever the case may be, most of them probably own the parent gun of that type that they bought on a 4473 anyway. So it's irrelevant, to make that claim that, it's something that's somehow an illicit activity.
Right. Well, when we think about bad guys want quick and smash and grabs, easy and out. They don't have a job. Their job is doing something to take something from somebody who already worked hard to get what they got.
Right.
So for them to go and buy the parts off the internet and build it, it's very, very, very small. Before I went and did the interview, I actually put a message out. There's a law enforcement group on Facebook, private law enforcement only. There's like 60,000 cops on this farm from all over the world, and I posted on there who has arrested somebody on a ghost gun charge, and I had, I think, one came back out of hundreds that responded and actually said that they had one case that somebody had built and it was a 3D printed gun. They 3D printed a gun, or they got it, because you got to remember, once you do the 80% and you build it, you can't sell that, you can't transfer that. That's your gun. So if you build it and make it, then you're building it for yourself. And if you give it to somebody else, well, now it's an illegal gun anyway.
There's some pretty distinct differences between being a manufacturer and building your own gun. Now, there's been some gray area and some confusion regarding the whole idea of, all right, how many guns can an individual build right before they are considered a manufacturer? What can a person do to dispose of their property before they're considered a manufacturer or a firearms dealer, right? So in this gray area that we tread in, how do we deal with that? What constitutes a manufacturer? Okay, well, does somebody order 50 polymer 80s and then convert them into guns and will sell them on the street? I don't think that's happening, right? Now, at that point, that might be a little bit gray area. Now, there's nothing legally that says you can't do that. But if you get to a point where you're making them and then you're selling them for profit, all right, you're a firearms manufacturer, right? At that point, it's a completely different legal matter. Or
you're doing it for somebody else, too.
Right, exactly. And the way that they approach this whole idea of building a firearm, if you build firearms to sell for profit, you're a firearms manufacturer.
Right.
Okay. If you buy guns, firearms in general, to turn around and sell for profit specifically as a means of purveyance, you are a firearms dealer, right? You are supposed to have an FFL. It even goes as far down the rabbit hole as to say that, all right, say you're a collector, all right, and you have hundreds of guns. And let's say at one point, you know what, I want to sell X amount of guns out of my collection, whether it's 30, 40, let's provide a large number, like 50 guns, all right? So you have 50 guns you want to sell. All right, well, yeah, you're transferring a heck of a lot of guns. Is that to say that you have to get an FFL just to dispose of your legally owned property? No, because you're not necessarily selling the gun specifically for like a profit. Like you didn't buy them to flip them.
Right.
You bought them to own them, but then you decided, all right, I just don't want them anymore and I want to sell them. Well, there's certain avenues that you can sell guns through. You can either take them to your local gun store and sell them or whatever. You can sell them to whoever you want. Once a firearm is your property, it's your property to dispose of with any way you wish. Now, you're encouraged, okay, and I encourage people to get a bill of sale, maybe check for a carry permit. You're still responsible for what happens to that gun and who you sell it to, right? So you can sell your gun to whoever you want, but you are ultimately responsible for what happens with that gun. Like if you sell it to somebody you know is a crook and is going to do some stupid crap, and then they do some stupid crap, and now that gun has got blood all over it and it's laying on a crime scene, they're going to come back to you because you're the last person that gun was disposed of on with a 4473. So there's some gray areas, like just because you can do something maybe doesn't mean you should.
Right. You don't want that on your conscience.
Yeah. So you still need to have a little bit of an idea like, hey, I probably shouldn't sell this gun to this guy who it looks like he's probably going to do something wrong.
We had it happen. There was a a kid at SU, Syracuse University, who went into a gun store to purchase a firearm, and he came in and he was a foreign exchange student. No, he was here on a visa, and you have to show hunter education card, hunter hunting license, hunter education card. And the FFL he just had a feeling. He's like, I don't know, something doesn't feel right about this. And he was ready to say, no, we can't do it because you don't have proof. And he like threw it in his face. Really weird. Like he was proud to show him it, and he was really like, it was a really odd situation. He said, and he said, okay, we'll run the NICS check. Went into the back. He told the employee, he goes, told him, don't run the NICS check. They didn't run. He comes back out. He goes, well, there's a wait, so we got to wait, and we'll call you and let you know. Well, then he went and got a hold of his contacts at the ATF, and they did a little background and found out, yeah, this isn't good. I guess the guy hopped on a flight right after he went to the FFL, and then they ended up arresting him when he came back into the country. And they went and checked his room, and he had tons of guns and ammunition, everything but the gun, ammunition, and it was just, he was a really, really odd situation. So they deported him, sent him back home, revoked his visa.
Well, and this is something else that I believe it's a little bit related to this video, so I'll just touch on it briefly. Just like with police, there's officer discretion, right? And a police officer can go, all right, this is bull crap. I don't think this is worth even pursuing. We're not going to deal with this. And it is related to the thing in PA, so I'll get back to this in just a second. But there's also FFL discretion, right?
Yes.
Most, if not all, FFLs, right? We're talking gun businesses. Most, if not all of them, have some type of internal policy, even if it's just an unwritten policy that they just tell their employees, if it don't feel right, don't do it.
Yep.
If a situation doesn't feel right, FFL reserves the right to go, you know what, this doesn't feel right, we don't like it. They reserve the right not to do it. Okay. Now, whether or not that happens all the time, it's hard to say. I mean, there's some FFLs that might look the other way and go, you know what, we're just trying to make money, sell guns. Yeah. I get it. Like, you're in the business to sell guns.
Right.
But there are a lot of them that will be like, you know what, this just doesn't feel right. If 2 or 3 people in the shop go, yeah, this isn't feeling right, well, then they just won't do it. Now, why does this relate to this? Okay, officer discretion. So let's see, he doesn't have a
touchscreen.
Get her back up there.
Went to New York one?
No. So this Attorney General, Josh Shapiro. So the Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer for like the entire state. So that's kind of like the head honcho law enforcement guy saying, okay, cops, this is what you need to do. It's a directive. It's a classification, okay? There's still officer discretion. But when you have such a high law enforcement officer, that's why this stuff in Virginia is so sensitive, right? We always go back to Virginia as a talking subject here, a talking point, because things going on in Virginia, it's the same type of thing where you have the Attorney General offering some sort of, directive, and that's pretty scary. So it puts the law enforcement officers in a really weird situation because they're like, well, we're all 2A, pro-gun, like a lot of them are pro-gun. So how do they deal with this from an officer discretion standpoint?
Well, even if you go to the local level, like a district attorney within a county, you've got in New York State specifically.
Yeah, they're out for that notch in their belt, the DA.
Yeah, right? I mean, I don't know any DAs that say, well, I got a 50% conviction record. No, they're usually like 98, 99, 100%.
They're going to take the fights they know they can win.
They're going to take the fights they know they can win, and that maybe will help elevate them to that next political position. I mean, that's their job, always trying to get that pay raise, right? So in a case like that, people got to remember that law enforcement are just enforcing the law. They're not there to be your friend. They're not there to find you innocent or guilty. They're there to collect the evidence and turn it over to that DA, to that prosecutor. So a lot of times, they're doing what they're supposed to do as far as their job, and that's a tough situation. Being
they still have morals, though.
Right? True.
It's okay for a police officer to go, well, you know what? I know it's the law, and yes, it's your job to enforce the law, but
you can look past some stuff.
This doesn't feel right. It's just that we probably need to overlook this. So there is a such thing as officer discretion.
True, but in some cases, even in that aspect, they can look past it, and the DA could come in and say, "No, we're prosecuting for that," and then
that's out of the police officer's hands.
Exactly, because they're the chief law enforcement officer for that county per se, or the state AG wise. So even in that case where law enforcement might turn a blind eye, if a DA gets wind or an attorney general gets wind, those charges can come. Federally, they can even come. There's that aspect if there's federal
What's
laws.
your take on, and this is not to divulge too much, from this particular video concept, but real quickly, like the whole thing in Virginia with the 2A sanctuary counties, the legal teeth of that. Like, what do you think is important? Like, if a county passes a resolution. Hey, we're a 2A sanctuary county. This is our resolution. This is our ordinance.
Right.
What political teeth does that have?
I think
over the governor.
Obviously, it's going to be different based on the state. If they have preemption, if like Utah, where the individual municipalities can't make their own laws that supersede or change the state law. So if something like that's in place, then that makes it harder. I mean, I want to see it in New York. I want to see the same concept. It's going to be a little harder in New York, especially when there's purse strings tied from the state level. Like the governor says, "Oh, we're going to dump millions of dollars into this jail that you need or something." You kind of run into
wink.
You kind of run into an issue where
we won't go there. Let's just say I had a conversation recently. But.
So it was something like that. They're kind of in a corner where they were elected to do something, and how do they get elected? Well, those ties.
But they also need the state money to run their programs,
Right.
get new uniforms,
Right.
guns, cars, build jails.
So that's the battle. I mean, even more than the legal aspect of it, because obviously if they're not going to prosecute, the DA might. Right? So even if the law enforcement doesn't, the DA might. They usually have their own investigators. I know in our counties in upstate, they have their own investigators that can go out and make arrests.
But the cops are kind of the soldiers of the situation, though.
They are.
It's
so
still their job to go out and do it, though.
If there's enough soldiers on your side, that's one thing. But then again, too, we got to remember they're human, and they've got a job that they're getting paid to do, and they got bills to pay just like everybody else. So they're in this conundrum. Not right. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's the truth.
They're going to have to do some soul searching for sure.
Most definitely.
Now, we're talking not only the police in PA over this whole 80% thing,
Yep.
the police in New York, which you're a part-time police officer in New York. So there's a lot of soul searching that has to happen at various levels for people to decide just how far down the 2A rabbit hole they're going to go in terms of individual rights and just how important those rights are to us as a free society. And at what point do you look the other way? And at what point do you, I'm not going to say bury your head in the sand, but at what point do you decide, you know what, my hypocrisy can only go so far, right? Like it's one thing when people, it's one thing when you've got, let's just say 100 people and 95 of them agree, okay, yeah, this makes sense. We should probably enforce this as a law for the betterment of society. What happens when out of 100, 98 people go, you know what, this law sucks, and I don't know who came up with this, but it's a terrible idea. So at what point, does it become more about what's morally correct in your heart and what the Constitution says?
Right.
And then when a law becomes not a law because the constituents are not willing to deal with it in the enforcement aspect, and then the law enforcement are not willing to deal with the personal risk,
right.
Not to mention the moral conundrum, the moral quandary they have to deal with in their hearts and minds and with their principles and values of enforcing a law they know in their heart is wrong.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah, totally. And I think that it's got to be that higher percentage of people going that route, just like in Virginia, what's happening in Virginia.
Well, it's like prohibition, the cops were getting drunk. I mean, it wasn't like it was some huge deal where, you had these foolhardy feds that were going really crazy and busting stills and right. going and like busting these illicit liquor operations, but your average Joe,
achievers.
Yeah, your average Joe though was going and getting drunk in the speakeasy just like the civilians were. It wasn't, they wanted to drink too. The cops drank.
Right.
It wasn't a big deal.
I think it all goes back to obviously these politicians thinking that, like you alluded to in the past, if they feel like it's either going to improve their political position or they truly feel like they're doing something to stop bad guys, which we know is either they're ignorant, they really don't know what they're saying or doing, or they truly have another agenda behind them where they're trying to do it under the guise of, hey, if we put this into law, the bad guys aren't going to get the guns, which we all know is crap. And they're really saying that because on the other side is they don't want people to be armed so that they can obviously have the anarchy side of the house.
So we wanted this to be, a video primarily about PA. I know we discussed New York a bit because we do have a New Yorker here. Hey, I'm walking here. You know what I mean? But anyway, we wanted to kind of touch on some of these subjects. But a lot of folks in PA were asking us to discuss the 80% firearms classification from Attorney General Josh Shapiro. So keep that on your radar. Make sure you contact your reps, complain. Yes. Guys, you are their constituents, right? Call up your reps and tell them that you won't vote them back in if they support this idea. Like, They have got to keep these people under pressure.
And ask them to give you a written response. Then it makes them put time to it. It's going to make them actually have to sit down and I've said, I don't want a canned response. I want a true response from you on why you support this bill or et cetera. And tell them about yourself. I mean, I just recently reached out to a senator's office in New York where they're trying to change the classification of peace officer. And I told them, Army vet, disabled Army vet, current law enforcement. I'm a law enforcement instructor and trainer. And I'm totally against this bill and the change of this bill. It's going to change a lot of things. And I got a personal call from the senator's office, state senator's office, saying, yeah, we made a mistake. That's not how we meant to word it. We're gonna get with the senator and actually reword it so that it's worded better.
Yeah.
Right. So you got that's.
You have to be the squeaky wheel, or you will not get the grease.
But do it with respect, because if you don't do it with respect, then they just throw you off as you're just a crazy person. You don't want to come across as crazy. You want to come across as educated,
professional crazy.
Professional crazy. So then that way they actually will listen to what you say, and that's ultimately the goal. They listen to what you say, and then that turns around and gets change made.
That's right. So guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. We hope you enjoyed it. Matt, thank you for being on.
No problem.
All right. Make sure you check out Meet the Pressers. It's a great podcast, great YouTube channel. Go over there and subscribe, follow them. They are a great group of guys, and we'll probably be on their podcast from time to time, I'm sure. Again, we'll co-host with them on that in future episodes, I'm sure. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Keep your ear to the ground on this stuff. It's important that we stay active and involved. It's important that we make every state's fight our fight, right? Just because I don't live in PA, I don't even hardly ever travel to PA, doesn't mean that their fight is not my fight. It doesn't mean the New Yorkers' fight is not my fight.
Yep.
We have to share in these fights equally and support each other, or many, many, many more states are going to go the way that New York has gone. You look at Chicago, you look at California, you look at what's going on in Virginia right now, you look at what's happening up with 1639 up in Washington, Washington State. That's a big deal. There's lots of folks fighting to get 1639 repealed, and you guys should share in that fight. We actually need to make more videos about it, and we will. So many more videos on the way. We really appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. If you love what we do and you want to support us, one of the most direct ways you can support us, you can go over on Patreon and donate. We sell t-shirts over on Ballistic Ink. Any content creator you buy t-shirts from over there, all those funds go right back into supporting that content creator directly, okay? So if you go on and buy a 22 Klingster Military Arms channel, Mr. Guns and Gear, any content creator you see, those funds support that content creator, which is awesome, right? And we also have our monthly subscription box man cans that we sell. If you love what we do and you wish to support us, those are the 3 ways you can do so. Make sure you check out Meet the Pressers, subscribe, show them your support. We'll see you next time. Many more videos on the way.
Stay safe.